Good afternoon, it's Kris Mastrangelo at American Healthcare Convention at the Provider Lounge. Today we have Mike Lehrman, Vice President of Healthcare Services with New Hampshire Catholic Charities. Welcome, Mike, thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about your organization.
Catholic Charities New Hampshire basically is a small provider of skilled nursing, assisted living, and independent living in New Hampshire. We have 8 facilities for nursing homes, and we're scattered throughout the state of New Hampshire, some rural and some in the cities.
Great. You know, being in, I'm from Massachusetts, so I'm up in New Hampshire quite a bit, but tell me, how are you anticipating the changes with healthcare affecting your organization?
It's going to be a challenge, no doubt. There's a lot of changes that are coming at us in a fairly short period of time, and I think we can take them in stride. Each one of them is probably manageable. My concern at this point, as we're learning stuff today and yesterday at the conference, is the rapidity of the change and sort of a very compressed time frame to get a lot of these things done.
Yep, there's about 700 pages strictly in the requirements of participation. We have, the MDS changes, all value-based purchasing, bundle payments. There is a lot coming at us. I mean, we're not sleeping, we're reading, and again, I'm thinking that a lot of the changes are a product of the election year. But so let's talk about some unintended consequences that might be negative to the consumer.
Well, in New Hampshire particularly, we're also looking at the prospect of Medicaid managed care coming into play in the next couple of years. So that's just an added burden on the providers in terms of being able to adapt to change, and that's a big one. So I think my concern is not just in New Hampshire, but I think everywhere for smaller skilled nursing providers is how they can muster the resources to get all this done in a 2-year period. And obviously, there's some advantages to being small in terms of directing things. But I think the bigger concern on my part at this point is whether or not the small provider will have enough resources internally to manage all the change and do so successfully in compliance with everything, as compared to, say, the larger chains who have corporate staffs of 2 or 3 or 4 people that are focused on any one of these topics and have that expertise in-house and they can do it. So I think there'll be need for more consulting help. And I think maybe, I guess the concern I have is with regards to CMS thinking about this, and I don't think they do, that you may find out with smaller groups of providers, small providers being pushed out of the marketplace.
And we don't want that. We want that diversity within the organizational structures in nursing homes, because we know there's value of large chains, but there's also simultaneously values of independent owners, because an independent owner is, defined by less than 10 skilled facilities. So we want that diversity because we want to have new ideas and making sure that the services to the senior populations are their best. And we don't want these regulation changes to negatively affect the viability of such small organizations. And I think that's important.
I think it also diverts attention from bigger picture. So there's a lot of things that are embedded in these, like the whole concept of person-centered care. We've been trying to march that forward in our organization for the last several years, and quite honestly, when you have implementation of new things, and these do, I'm acknowledging, they do embed some principles of that, but overall, it distracts from your ability to focus on some of the purposeful things you want to do anyway, and where you divert your resources to.
Agreed 100%, because again, one of the things that reiterating that when their expectations or the systems changes are so enormous, there has to be reform or payment reform in that context. In other words, you can't create a final rule that talks about the increased complexity of this patient population, put all these standards on a skilled nursing facility and then not pay them. So the reimbursement needs to follow if the level of acuity and the level of services is being redefined.
Well, the reimbursement issue by itself is a whole separate thing. I mean, it's almost like that's a separate subject if you want to talk about how do you cope with the changes and get paid. Okay, that's another subject. Just the enormity of the changes themselves, minus the reimbursement, is a big enough issue.
Perfect, agreed. And it's a lot to handle for the facilities and the smaller facilities, and we're seeing it everywhere. So one last question, you know, the person-centered care, we agree, it's the way to go. We're all happy with that. How are you feeling about the quality measures and the 5-star? Any opinions on that?
I think they're fine. I mean, no measurement system is perfect, and we can complain all day long, and we do like to complain occasionally about how things come out, but it is something that's measured, and it's not perfect, but it's a tool. So I think, you know, by and large, it's an okay thing. I think the problem comes is when people either overinterpret the significance of it, and they don't understand what's really behind it, and take that as the gospel, and it's not necessarily.
Exactly. I agree 100%. If the measure isn't, or the 5-star, in some instances may not properly really reflect, but we'll dig down and figure that out. And it was great having you today. Mike Lehrman from New Hampshire Catholic Charities. He's the Vice President of Healthcare Services. We're grateful for your time. Thank you for coming today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent.